Queen of the Fae. Pirate spell bomb, but that wasn't a bomb, it was just a spell bomb. Skeletal Vampire. Adarkar Valkyrie. I botched that pronunciation. On the other hand, this discussion is academic because if we see the salvages, we are probably just taking them. Yeah, I think he is better than all uncommons and commons. So, and of course there are commons that you first pick. There are first to third picks, removal, etc. So this guy must be better than that if he's supposed to be bomb. But this is academic and we need to move on. And I don't have a record for how long this recording is. Can I see it here? I can't. Okay. 4-0, 1 mana rare artifact. Thank you. But let's move over to the Saltfield Recluse. Okay, thanks Token Lick. Saltfield Recluse is a 1/2 for 3 mana. But his effect is -2, -0 until end of turn. Telegraph combat trick. I don't like him either, but the question is how high do we pick him? Do we play him? The 23rd card in the Rebel deck, that was harsh. So you're telling me that this guy is worse than a bear? In a control deck, you'd rather have a bear. He is worse than a bear. Yeah, I am prepared to accept that. I almost wrote worse than a beer, and he's definitely worse than a beer. He can block a beer. Yeah, he can. 3 mana for 1/2 is really bad. 23rd card in control deck, 23rd card in the Rebel deck. Sounds good to me. So it's a conditional 23rd card, which makes him a 10th to 12th pick. So let's forget about him, and we are coming to a counterspell. I hate counterspells in Limited. I absolutely detest them. I know I detest them a bit too much. And especially in control versus control matches, I suffer from it. But what about Logic Not? In the world of counterspells, how good does this fare? The only counterspell I play in Limited is basically Mana Drain and Counterspell. And I'm passing like Mana Leak all day. But I know I am too much. Anti. X. Counter target spell unless its controller pays X. So you can basically cast this as a better spell than Mana Leak in situations. 7th to 10th pick. Yep, I can buy that, but we only do 3 picks. So it's a 7th to 9th then. In a heavy blue deck, this card is sweet, and you'll probably get it. And we have it as 7th, 9th pick, and here's another sideboard card. Dispeller's Capsule will provide the white deck with enchantment and artifact removal, just like the split second card we just reviewed. But how... Is this a white card or an artifact card? Where do I put it in the review? It costs 4 mana to... But it can be abused with salvagers and probably some other stuff. It is a white card, right? It's not an artifact. It's more of a white card than an artifact. So I'm listing it among the white cards, as you actually need to have white. And the artifact deck will of course pick it higher. And then the question is, how much higher do you pick it if you are the artifact deck? Because it's an 8th to 10th pick for a white deck. Maybe a 5th to 7th pick for the artifact deck. But you need some way of abusing it or affinitying it. And of course, getting an enforcer, 1 extra mana, 5th to 7th is a bit high. 6th to 8th, maybe. If you still don't have any targets for it, it's pretty meh. So it's a sideboard card, and you want it as you want a sideboard card in pretty much all decks. And this card that we're looking at now is Dark Banishing. But it's better than Dark Banishing because it can be abused. And you can pay the mana in installments. I played 2. You wouldn't main deck the Dispeller's Capsule in Affinity. Right? What are your other things? Would you main deck Dispeller's Capsule in Affinity? I just took that for granted. Given that we know that there are a lot of... But you're taking all the artifacts, so... Then pretty much... But if you're not main decking it, it's about the same level pick for the Affinity deck as for anybody else. But you need the cheap artifacts, right? There are other ways to use the cheap artifacts. There are the Salvagers, there is Affinity. Weren't there any other ways? Okay, maybe it's just 1 pick better. So it's a 7th to 9th pick for the Affinity deck. But I would like to main deck it as the 22nd card, maybe. Okay, we move on to the good capsule. I am first picking Executioner's Capsule, and I'm not feeling too bad about it. It's a card I played 2 of in my Pauper deck, which is featured on MagicGatheringStrat, on Pure MTGO, and on this YouTube channel, MagicGatheringStrat. It's an incredibly good card. And it's just, at worst case with Executioner's Capsule is that it is Dark Banishing, and that's the first pick itself. So it's just high quality removal. And if you're facing a Mono Black deck, then something is really strange. And you are in bad luck. And you have to sideboard this out. Moving on to the Deep Cavern Imp. Deep Cavern Imp is a 2/2 flyer for 3 with haste. Really good. But it has an echo cost of discarding a card, which sounds pretty much to me like it's a Dredge card. And is it only a Dredge card? Is the drawback too much to even play it in another deck? I wouldn't feel good about playing this. In the very best of worlds, this is like the Sky Knight Legionnaire with an easier casting cost, which of course is really good. But if you are the Dredge deck, does this always help you? Won't you have hands where you have nothing that you really want to discard, that you would like to keep all your cards? So this will actually hurt you. That pretty much summarizes it, yes. If not Dredge Graveyard, don't play it. So how unplayable is it? Is there any circumstances where you would like this at your 23rd card? Probably not. So I'm saying it's not the high pick in Dredge. Opponent had 2 life with no flyers. Yeah, that's the best case. I'm saying it's a 6th to 8th pick in Dredge, because I can see its ability being really bad in Dredge too. And an 11th to 13th pick in other black decks. And here's a dragon, Podic Dragon. How good is this guy? Podic Dragons, opinions? While I write, because I'm writing an article at the same time. It will be published at MagicGatheringStrat.com. There is a link in the here on Twitch right now. It's great, good, awesome. I don't know. 6 mana for 4/4 that flies. That's pretty good in itself. I'll say that's a 35th pick in a draft format like this. But he also breathes fire. That's awesome. So that makes him better, actually. I think he's a 2nd to 4th pick. It's not a bomb. It's not a very... Maybe it's a 1st to 3rd pick with fire breathing, but it's not really a bomb for 4 power and toughness for 6 mana, is it? But the Suspend then is really good. Does he reliably come out on turn 4, really? The opponent will be casting a spell every turn. So he comes out like on turn 9 or something if you suspend him. Because the opponent needs to miss playing turns in 2. He'll play a 3-drop, 4-drop, 5-drop, 6-drop and miss one of them most of the time. So maybe turn 7, 6 or 7, not 9. I agree with that. But if you get him on turn 6 and don't have to play any more mana, he's even better than he was before. Because you are reliably casting this normally on turn 7 or 8 for 6 mana. Because you never have 6 mana on turn 6. Almost never. It's pretty hard. Yep. This guy is a 1st pick for sure. A 1st to 3rd pick. You do never cast him for 6 mana, but if you have 6 mana, you'll cast him for 6 mana. Are you telling me that if you have 6 mana, you're going to suspend him anyway? That seems weird. He's uncommon, of course, but that doesn't really affect the level we'll pick him at. I'm thinking a 1st to 3rd pick. Fat Dragon. Do you cast him at 5 mana if you have the 6th mana in hand? Will you cast him when you have hit 5 mana for 2? But if you don't have the 6 mana in hand, you will probably cast him for 2. And there's a lot of rares I wouldn't pick over this. This must be the best red uncommon for sure. Yeah, I'm happy first to start picking this guy and beating people with my giant flyer. It's all upside. So let's move on. Here we can flash in a 4/4 wall. Yay! And it can never ever attack. It is control. It's like very conditional removal. But removal you probably want in control. So it's definitely playable. Yeah, it's conditional removal in the sense that it won't help you when you are attacking. The opponent has to be attacking. So let's again think about the 4 phases of limited. You don't want to cast this on turn 3, probably. You probably have a better thing to do on turn 3. If you're winning, this card does nothing. If you're on the defense, this card probably saves you. It kills the Pardic Dragon. And if you're on parity, this card also does nothing. So it really only works when you are on the defense. And that's why it's conditional. But it will probably hit something useful almost all of the time. If you're getting beaten down with a giant thing, then okay, at least you gained a turn. And for a tier 2 removal spell, it's still cheap. But it's also very tied to white-blue. This card is not good at all in white-red. You probably have to have 6 mana in a white-red deck to cast this. That is half your mana or white. And then it's questionable at best to play it. So it ties you, it's really color demanding. You have to be white-blue. And if you're white-blue, you'll get this card. But I'm thinking if you want the Plume Whales, you will get the Plume Whales. But they are playable, so we are talking about the 7th to 9th pick. And there's probably no competition in the draft unless someone else is drafting the white-blue deck. And I think if you're picking this a lot higher than that level, you're not going to get a very effective deck. Maybe it's higher than 7 to 9. Do you know what? During all this entire discussion, I thought the card died at the end of turn. Sorry. Okay. So we are moving this card up. Oh, sorry. So I was just, wait a minute. Where's the remove it at the end of turn? It's a 4/4 wall then that you can flash in. That's a lot different. But are you playing this in black-blue? You want to cast this when you have 6 mana? Is this what you want to be doing? So I think it's only playable in blue-white still. Yeah, you want to cast it when they swing with their hill giant. Absolutely. But it goes up a lot in... You want to cast it when they swing with their Auric Salvators. How high do you pick it? Do you pick this over Hill Giant? A Hill Giant in white-blue is pretty sweet though. You are white-blue, so you're probably defensive and you're probably artifact-oriented or artifact-oriented. The artifact deck is the white-blue deck that Wizards put in the set. You can probably make a classic blue-white Flyers defensive Azorius style deck. I'm thinking you're picking this guy pretty much on the same level as a Hill Giant in the deck that needs him. And that he's an 11th to 13th pick in other white or blue decks. Can it really make the cut in a blue X deck? I would feel so bad sitting with this in my hand. If I have 7 blue mana, if I have 8 blue mana in my deck, it's unplayable. You will get it on the average on turn 8 if you have 8 blue mana. So you need to, if you have 9 blue mana, you can cast this on the average on turn 6 or 7. If you're aggressive affinity, you're not playing it, of course. Okay, it's a 5th to 7th pick in defensive UE, and I think you should just stay away from this card if you are other colors. If you're like really heavy blue in blue-black, then make the adjustment, but I think you have to be blue-white pretty much. Okay, I can't pronounce the name of this card. What the hell is this? It's a 7 mana card with an enormous mana cost. Yeah, we are moving on. Definitely, and I don't think we will be able to complete during the allotted time here. Petesisebes. Is this just a bad card? Destroy target creature. I thought it was a creature with that name. Destroy target creature, blah blah blah. Okay, for its effect alone, I wouldn't cast it. But it has Suspend, and that makes it barely playable, right? It's bad Suspend and it's bad for the casting cost, but it's still removal. So I'm saying that this is a third. Oh, it's power plus its toughness. That's pretty good. But also quite the damage spell. It gets you reach. And it's super slow. And we must realize that some of the limited games have ended by the time it comes out of suspension. But if it has not, this card swings the game a lot. So I would play this, for sure. I think the control magic is a larger effect. Because the control magic takes 2 cards on the battlefield. This just affects 1 card on the battlefield. And if the opponent has 20 lives, the damage doesn't do a lot. And also the casting cost is way higher here because it's 4 black. And actually, being 4 black, if you have 8 black mana, you're casting this on turn 13. And the game is over by then. So you have to suspend it. You can't cast this card. It's uncastable. unless you're Mono Black. Yeah, Mono Black only if hardcast. So then you're looking at this 5 Suspend card only. And maybe you were right there at the beginning saying bad if Suspend, bad if not, bad moving on. It's a horrible top deck. It's only good if you draw it in your starting hand. And they get to adjust. I'm starting to think that this is unplayable. But the effect is huge. But you're not hardcasting this in your blue-black deck. So you're telling me it's not even a 23rd card? Yeah, also, yes, you have to cast it on turn 2. You missed out turn 2. So you're really giving up your second turn. I know I'm gonna lose to this card sometime, but it probably is a dead card. I wouldn't say it's a 15th pick. It will win games. A very small percentage of the time. I'm thinking 11th to 13th pick here. Anybody of you that will main deck? But will you get the mono black weenie? Monocolor decks are really hard to get in limited. And won't people want black? Won't the goblin guy take the black? Okay, I think I'm comfortable with this at 11th to 13th pick. And I'm gonna run for 50 minutes more. So, let's move to Pepper Smoke. And this card has already been discussed here a bit. And everybody was quite fond of it. It's a pretty good card in Faeries. But how good is it? If you're not Faeries, then you probably should not be playing this. Crippling Blight is a good card in M13 Limited actually, at least a playable, but you probably are not playing this if you're not Faeries. But are you not playing it in Faeries? How many X1s are there? That's a good question. There are definitely some X1s, but it will probably be a mediocre combat trick that's not main deckable. But in Faeries, I like this a lot. Lots of flying X1s. You can kill Court Monculus if it doesn't have an artifact. Okay, I'm saying it's a 10 to 12th pick if not Faeries. But how high in Faeries? Removal that drew you card. It's pretty good. Maybe it's a 5th to 7th pick in Faeries. Only play this if you are Faeries. Or sideboard it in against X1 or X1s. Pretty much. Moving on. Crush Underfoot. Great name. Whoa. Well, this was conditional. Really conditional. So the only question here is, how good is this if you're giant? And how many giants do you need? It's instant super fight. How many? How many giants do you run in your deck to play this? Eight is the magic number, right? But I would not... I would think you need more to make it a really high pick. But okay, if you have 8, you know that you will be able to cast this during the course of the game probably. But it's still a dead card in your hand some of the time. But its effect is pretty large. The giants have a lot of power, and this is probably a very good kill spell. So it's a spell you really want in your giant deck. But are you picking this over your giants? Maybe you are. And it will come to you late. Because if somebody picks this with like 3 giants in his deck, it's a horrible decision. So tell me, are you picking this over the giants themselves? Are you giving up a giant to take this? Like an average giant, who is a 5th to 7th pick. A hill giant, if there were a hill giant in the set. You're probably taking this over the hill giant, but not much higher than the hill giant. So I'm thinking a 4th to 6th pick in giants. A 13th to 15th pick. It's a 15th pick, of course, if you don't have a Giants deck. 3 common, changeling and common. That's interesting. $11 Giants. Wow! But wait a minute. If you have 11 Giants, getting 8 Giants will be impossible. 6 common giants. You still can't get 8 giants, right? So you will have to play this with less. Nine common giants and changelings. I'm still saying that it's really hard to get enough giants. I'm thinking we're picking this at about the same level we're picking a giant, so an average giant, if there is such a thing. So 5th to 7th pick in giants, and then a 13th to 15th, or a 15th pick if you don't have any giants. But if you are the lone giant guy, you are playing Crush Underfoot. Okay, moving on to the Court Homunculus. This guy seems pretty sweet in the artifact deck. Absolutely better than a Dispeller's Capsule. But possibly not a reason to go artifacts, it's just a 2-2 after all. We know that 2-2s for 1 are not super high picks in limited, because they, even if they are cheaper than the cost, they will be outclassed. But they're way better than bears. I'd say a 2-mana, a 1-mana 2-2 like the Cackler, even without the unblockable thing, it's not even a 3rd to 5th pick. Because you can't win limited games with bears, even if they're good. You can win them, but yeah, you know what I mean. They are outclassed, they're useless some of the time. 9 common giants and changelings. I'm still saying that it's really hard to get enough giants. I'm thinking we're picking this at about the same level we're picking a giant, so an average giant, if there is such a thing. So I'm thinking a 4th to 6th pick in giants, a 13th to 15th pick. But this guy also has synergy effects. So how high do you pick him if you are artifacts? And do you play him if you are like blue-white control with some artifacts? You probably do. How reliably do you need this effect? Maybe it's a trap actually if you are not affinity. If you have like 4 artifacts, maybe this is a trap because it'll be 1-1 for 1 so often. But how high do you pick this guy in affinity? I'm thinking 4th to 6th pick here because he won't always be a 2-2. But if he is, it's really great. You have to have the artifact on turn 2 to make him really useful. But in aggressive affinity, this is one of the cards you will want. And he's common, so you could probably pick up a lot more of them. Yep, 256 commons per draft pool, and you will probably see most of the core homunculuses if you are affinity. And you'll probably play them all. So 2 or 3 homunculuses. Sounds like a pretty good base for an affinity deck. I like him. He's a 4th to 6th pick. I am moving on. Average common shows up 2.3 times. That's good math to know. And Homunculus is rather similar to Frogmite. What about Frogmite? I'm looking at the Mirrodin review. And Frogmite was a trap in Mirrodin. Yes, we moved on to Frogmite. And Frogmite was a trap in Mirrodin block. Can you believe that? But it was. Because you couldn't reliably have enough artifacts to cast him on turn 2. And if you can't cast him on turn 2, he's worthless. And you have much less artifacts here, so Frogmite is pretty much unplayable. And if you cast Frogmite on turn 3, I'd say he's barely playable. You don't want to play a Grey Ogre. You have to be able to cast Frogmite on turn 2 every time. And that won't happen. I'll show you the text here as soon as I write the headline. So I think Frogmite is a trap in this format as well. And that you should not be playing, even if you're affinity. You had the artifact land in Mirrodin, it was still a trap. But in Mirrodin you could construct the deck that wanted the Frogmite some of the time, but you never ever drafted the Frogmite before you did that. So we are not playing Frogmites in Modern Master Limited. Yeah, but casting a bear for 2 mana you want to do on turn 2. And how many times? If you have 8 artifacts, you want to reliably be casting them on turn 1 and 2. So you need more than that. And I think we are looking at the scenario where Frogmite, in the best of worlds, is a bear. Yeah, if you can build a deck that can cast 2 Frogmites on turn 3, you probably deserve all the Frogmites you get. And you can probably get them as well. But if it was a trap in Mirrodin, and I played pretty much a lot of Mirrodin drafts, and I didn't change this, so I am quite confident saying that Frogmite is worse than in 2.3 Frogmites, so you will never have 2 in your starting hand. So the advice here is never ever ever play Frogmite in Modern Masters Draft, pretty much, unless they all fall on you. And remember not to be the guy with the best case scenario mentality, to try to build a reliable draft deck that gets you 3 O's and not wins some game because something amazing happened at some time. And you are talking about best case scenarios right now. I'm happy discarding Frogmite, and I'm moving on to Tribal Flames. What about Tribal Flames? I smell really good removal here. But it's not in the Sunburst deck, because the Sunburst deck is blue-green and of course has a lot of other colors. But so you'll splash it in the Sunburst deck. Best burn in the set. Is this even better than Lightning Helix? Is it best in a 3-color deck? It's still a sorcery. In the 3-color deck, it will do 2 or 3 points of damage, probably on turn 2. At sorcery speed. So it's definitely not the Seared Spear. And probably not the Volcanic Hammer. So it's worse than that. In a 5-color deck, it's absolutely funny. But one additional basic land you will draw so seldom. But it's, of course, it's a nice bonus. The question here is really how good 2 toughness is. If 2 toughness is the critical level and everything has 2 toughness, you'll always find a target for Tribal Flames, which makes it at least a 4th to 6th pick or a 3rd to 5th pick. And I have a hard time placing it lower than that, 4th to 6th pick. And if you know you have the deck for Tribal Flames, you'll pick it higher. In mono red, of course, but I don't think we'll see many mono decks. They are uncommon. They are really hard to get in core setty draft formats, and this is a rather core setty draft. I'd say in a like white red. Okay, primer red, of course not. It's not good, but most decks will be 2-color decks, and their Tribal Flames will be a quality card, a 4th to 6th pick card. But it's not better than that, and I wouldn't want to like first pick this and try to go domain. Yeah, but also now we are constructing like rare scenarios for Tribal Flames to be really good, and we have to look at it as in all scenarios, and I think it's not better than a 4th to 6th pick. So let's move on to Blind Spot Giant. What is the name of the giant growth in red? The giant growth in red for this format. What's its name? But you don't really want to build and develop and do stuff just to cast a removal spell. Blind Spot Giant is one of the 9 common giants. I wish that he was just that he could still block. Then he would be really good. But this is not very impressive, is it? You will have to discuss Blind Spot Giant for 1 minute. Is he even playable is my first question. We know that we are not getting 8 giants probably. If we have 6 giants in the deck and this is one of them, do we play him? Brute Strength, thank you. Oh, we have another streamer coming online here, so I will leave a bit earlier. This is of course no Ember Beast. Ember Beast is a way better card than this guy. And getting 8 giants, I think it's really, really hard to do it. So what if you have 6 giants? If you have 6 giants, you have by turn 6 drawn 2 giants. So this guy can only attack or block on turn 6. 21 common giant cards in your pool. That's an interesting figure. So that makes it sound a bit easier to get 8 giants, really. That could even support 2 8 giant. Okay, let's assume you have 8 giants. Then you will have 2 giants by turn 3, and the time you cast the other. Of course, red. If red is heavily played, there will be metagame shifts, and then people will not play red. They will play red, etc. So we can't really concern ourselves with this. So if we're taking this guy, we are going. We're either decided to go with the giant deck, or we are deciding later to go with the giant deck. The question is then, if you have 2 giants in your hand by turn 3, the other giant probably costs more to cast, so maybe costs 5. So you cast this, you can use this guy then on turn 5. Quite reliably. And of course the other giant gets killed, and then this guy hangs around being useless. I'm not seeing it. 23rd pick in a giant deck. Yeah, I think Token Lick is right there. It's a 23rd pick in a giant deck. And that would put it at a 7 to 9 pick in Giants. Unplayable if you are not heavy Giants. Alright. Yeah, 2 blind Giants on the board. That's nice. Let's move on to Festering Goblins, the really bad ancestor of Fumespitter. But still not that bad, right? It's quite similar to a Goblin Arsonist. I'd say it's worse than Goblin Arsonist, because it can't hit players, which Goblin Arsonist does a lot of the time, but the effect is very small. It can hit regenerators, but that's even smaller. So this is quite similar to a Goblin Arsonist. And I know Goblin Arsonist pretty well, because I have drafted so many M13 drafts that you won't believe it. So I'm gonna look at my rating for Goblin Arsonist. And Goblin Arsonist is never a useful card. And it always seems to overperform. Of course, there are no arms dealers here, but there are other Goblin synergy cards. So I think this is just a Goblin Arsonist. And we have Goblin Arsonist at the 6th to 8th pick level. That is, it is about as useful as a Faeries. And it does cost 1 mana, so you cast it earlier. This is what we said in M13. I have main decked 4 Goblin Arsonists and I never regretted it. So yeah. Blue Black Faeries is one of the 10 decks that are present in the format and given to us by Wizards, yes. So there will definitely be Blue Black Faeries. I'm now starting to think this is a card we have already done. Because I tried to do this in the order... Oh no, it isn't! God damn it. Or maybe I misspelled Perilous. Perilous? No, I haven't done this card. So let's look at it. Anybody played with Perilous Research in its format? There is a card similar to this in Pauper already. It's great to answer a removal spell with this, but it's pretty conditional. I think we're looking at Scarscale Ritual, that's it. We have a look at the review of this card. It will be about as useful as it was in its set. It's a Cold Snap card. Okay, Cold Snap was weird, I hear. Cold Snap. Limited review blue. From Jeff Cunningham. I can trust Jeff Cunningham. Research. Limited. Solid. It's not especially hard to swing. Not that huge of a deal. this is then just a card draw filtering spells. Maybe it's on the same level as divination, because it's a sack outlet. How many sack outlets what do you need sack outlets for in this format? I think it isn't great that it's an instant. If damage was on the stack, it would be very different. But will you reliably be able to find a use for this? I don't think you will. But we are getting 1 mana less. We have an upside. There will be some of the time we reply to removal with this. We have a sack outlet, etc. But some of the time we'll just have to sacrifice something. We can chump block the sack creature. It mitigates flooding somewhat. But is it better or worse than divination? Would you rather play divination? Because I know where to rate divination. But there's a lot of like fringe cases with this card. .85 land cards back when you draw 2 cards, right? So my question here to you, is this better or worse than divination? Would you rather reliably draw 2 cards at sorcery speed than play this? So you're telling me this is better than divination? It's definitely not the big tempo loss that divination is. And you're probably not casting this on turn 2 anyway, so it's similar to divination in that way. You're casting this maybe on turn 5 or 6, if you have nothing else to do. I'm thinking I'm picking this as a 5th to 7th pick. Then. Better than divination, absolutely worse than the other blue card draw spells. Of course, it lets you leave spell stat and mana up. That's true. Okay, I'm happy placing that as a 5th to 7th pick. Sea Weaver here is the other streamer, so Chris, when you want the channel, tell me and I'll quit. If not, I'll quit in 20 minutes. Is there a sack outlet in Faeries that you can use this for? Or is there something you want to sack? Oh, okay, you would... Oh yeah, I still have to quit in 20 minutes because I got stuff to do. Let's move on from perilous research then. And move to dampen thought. Target player puts top 4 cards of his library into his graveyard. It's a mill card. You can splice onto Arcane. I don't need to read more. This is unplayable. I don't see a mill deck here. And even if you have a mill deck, you probably are not playing this card, because it doesn't affect anything. It's a very similar to Mind Sculpt in M13, and I'm gonna say never play. 15th pick. I take token instead of this. That's a good quote. I never play paper, but I know what you mean. Okay, time for Imperiosaur. Imperiosaur has caused quite an uproar in Pauper because people think this will be playable in Pauper, and it won't. But it's definitely a good limited card. Imperiosaur. We already established that a 4/4 for a 4/4 for 4 is probably a 2nd to 4th pick in itself, especially with an upside, and that's. But this is a 5/5 for 4. It's Advent of the Worm level. It's not. Yeah, I'm thinking first pick here. What non-basic lands are you playing? The non-basic lands didn't look very attractive in this set. So if you cast this on turn 5, it becomes worse, but it doesn't become a lot worse. And I'm not too impressed by the Vivid. Imperiosaur. Of course, Deadbridge Goliath actually has an upside and this doesn't. But it's borderline first pickable. It's too green. It's very aggressive, but it's too green, so it will lock you into green. Are you picking this over Lightning Helix? The Lightning Helix test. We have Lightning Helix at the 2nd to 4th pick because it locks you into white-red. And this locks you into one color. First pick, first pack. You're absolutely taking this over some rares and a lot of uncommons. But is it first pick material? Actually, how do you respond? What do you do if your opponent plays this on turn 4? Will you even survive it? The red removal is useless. You need to have black removal or the white pacifist thing. But some decks will just crumble and die to Imperiosaur on turn 4. This is a really interesting limited question actually, if this is first pickable or not. Yeah, you need to be... Do you need to be primary green? If you are playing 17 land, you have 8 green. You will on the average have the mana to cast this on turn 4. Quite reliably. And actually it's a real fundamental question about limited. 5/5 on turn 4. And this guy also affects when you're winning, when you're losing, and when you're at parity. You're happy to play this guy. He's definitely not a bomb, but is he a 1st to 3rd pick or 2nd to 4th pick? And this is exactly what I want to be doing in limited if I'm playing green. I have been 2nd to 4th picking the elephant, the priced elephant in M13 draft. And I consider myself an expert in M13 draft. If you have 8 forest, you will get your 2nd forest on turn 3 on the average. So quite seldom you will not have it on turn 4, and in some of those cases you will have other things to do on turn 4. So you don't suffer too much. But you will win some games by playing this on turn 4. So you open the booster, there's Imperiosaur, it's the first pick, first pack, you open the booster, you see Imperiosaur and Lightning Helix. Do you like to draw? I like to draw, but yeah, absolutely. No other creature is this big, this early in the format. You should never ever, almost never draw when playing limited actually. There are the formats where you should draw are way fewer than you think. There was a great article on Pure NTU where they ran a lot of data on this. And only in control versus control matchups, in some formats, is it correct to draw. So basically never ever draw instead of play in limited. Even in sealed. The problem with Helix is that you're locking yourself into the giant deck, pretty much. Or you're locking yourself into tree-color deck. That's why you don't pick it. Don't think about money here. You can think about money if you're picking the money card. Then money is a reason. And you should probably pick a money card if it's 4 or 5, between 4 and 5 ticks for this set. Probably even higher. But if you see a 3-tick card, you shouldn't pick it in a normal, given the price structure, etc. But if think about it for the review. I want to think a ticket is $1. I want you to think that this is the final draft of the Pro Tour. Are you locking yourself into white-red with Lightning Helix, or do you prefer to be green with Imperiosaur? The more I think about this, I'm first picking this guy. I'm gonna beat down with my 5-5, and they better handle it or lose the game. And I will never be unhappy to draw him. If I was at the Pro Tour and play the final draft, I would not first pick Foil Tarmogoyf. How much is he worth? 200? If it is the final draft of the Pro Tour, every spot is worth a lot more than 200. So then I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. I would feel miserable if I did that. Okay, moving on to Moldavine Cloak, which is a very good card. And this is a card that was played in Ravnica. Drafts. It is still an enchantment with all the with some of the disadvantages, but people were first picking this because it was an unkillable piece of equipment. And everybody who first picked it won the drafts. The Dredge effect was pretty secondary. It just really wrecked games. So, and this is a format that is not substantially faster than Ravnica was, even though Ravnica was a slow format. So I could see downgrading this one slot, but it doesn't have the downsides. Wow. It doesn't have the downside of a creature enchantment, really. And you're probably happy drawing this instead of your regular card all the time, so yeah, first pick your Moldavine Cloaks and go with them, pretty much. It might even be better than Imperiosaur. This will sadly be the last card for today. Chris, I still hope you will stream after me. We are going to talk about Face Walter, the black card. It is possible that I will do this again in about 10 to 12 hours. Depends on muggle things, real world things. Because I would really like to finish the article before it's released in paper. But maybe I have to go for the... I was thinking I would do this for the online release. I was thinking I would do this for M13 as well, but it was a huge undertaking. This really took a lot longer than I thought. Great, so Chris is streaming after me. Stay tuned. What are you going to do, Chris? Are you playing RTR Block Limited or are you playing RTR Block Constructed? Anyway, Face Walter. It's a 1-1 for 1. Ugh. That sometimes has an upside, but it costs you a Goblin. But you can do this a lot of the time. Okay, so we are getting a RTR block draft after this. Dragon's Maze, Gate Crash, Return to Ravnica. And this guy is a better drafter than I am, if we're not drafting Magic 2013, so he has some great insights into the format. Is anybody playing Face Walter? It seems like a very, very conditional card. Of course, if you have a couple of goblins, he will kill something, but at a very high cost. And he can finish the game if unanswered, but how hard is he to answer? Not very hard. Is it unplayable? Or are you playing the Face Walter? Everybody's stunned by this fantastic card. It has threat of activation. The Goblin deck is one of the 10 pre-constructed decks that are put into this cube that they call Modern Masters. So Black-Red Goblins is one of the 10 decks they have put in here to draft. And it's all quite well tested by expert drafters, so there's absolutely a straight Goblin deck in the format. I think the threat of activation is like, if somebody activates this, I'm probably happy most of the time because his goblins are dying. Isn't this just really bad? Of course it's a great kill condition after Empty the Warrens, but then you're winning anyway. So it's a win more card for goblins, isn't it? And even in a straight goblin deck, I don't like this guy a lot. Maybe as a 23rd card. Yeah, they have to block the 1/1, but chances are that most of you guys are 1/1s anyway. It reminds me about the vampire, Blood-Throne Vampire in M13, and Blood-Throne Vampire was unplayable in M13. I know it did some stuff in Zendikar, but this guy is no Blood-Throne Vampire, so this guy should be even more unplayable. But in the Goblin deck, he is a Blood-Throne Vampire for 1 less mana. So that means he's the 23rd card in Goblins. And that's it. I'm gonna leave you quickly now to let Chris do his streaming. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching. I will do one more part of this, and hopefully tonight. Thank you, Chris.